Hey there, and welcome to another video on OOP in Python 3. In this session, we're going to be looking at the idea of a property setter and a property deleter using a simple employee class I've made up here. Before we start, I'm going to quickly cover what a property is, although there is a full video on this in this OOP playlist. And just before I get into the video, I've just finished my 16-hour-long Python course on Udemy, and for the next few months, I'm going to be giving it away for free. So if you check the link in the description, if you want a really in-depth course for Python, there's about 25 quizzes, there's 20 coding assignments or so on, something like that. It's massive. So if you're looking for a way to learn Python from scratch for free, check that link out and see what you think. So to jump straight in, let's just quickly go over what we have here. We have a basic employee class, and to make an employee, we're going to pass in an F name, an L name, so first and last name, and a role here. So we've created Alan, so we've done Alan Turing as F name and last name, and his role as a code breaker here. And I've got a simple property, so I won't go into this into too much detail because there's an additional video on this, but effectively think of this as it looks like a method. However, when we use it under the premise of it's an attribute. So just to show you what I mean, if I do print Alan.fname, so I'm accessing the fname attribute, we get Alan. So then if I do Alan.email, this looks like I'm accessing an attribute, but actually I access this here. So this decorator effectively makes this behave like an attribute, and its special ability is that it will take the most recently updated fname and lname. So say for example we've been using this instance for a while, and then suddenly we want to change Alan's first name to something else. If we then ask for the email here, this will take that most recently updated fname. So it's a way to make your attributes dynamics. In this case here, if the email is made up of an fname and an lname, we want these to update as these and these update here. But of course, feel free to go and watch the full video if that helps. Let's go on to what setters and deleters actually do. We'll start with setters. So let's say, for example, I just want to go ahead and change the email here. If I do Alan.email equals, and then I want to go ahead and set something. So if I did this here, and it's a gibberish string, we straight away get an error because it's saying this property doesn't have a setter. So what we want to do is use a special decorator, and we're going to write a method which enables us to set this properly here. So I'm going to quickly get rid of this, and I'm going to start creating this underneath here. Now, whenever we're creating a setter, what we want to do is use the name of the method, in this case email, and we're going to start off by writing email dot, you see mine recommends it here, dot setter. And then underneath, what we're going to do is create def email self again. So we always use the same name here. However, what we want to do is pass in an additional argument which is going to become, that new data. So if I say, let's say full name, and in this case, this can be anything really, but we want to say, okay, let's pass in an F name and an L name, we'll split it apart, and then that can then become the new email here. So what we'll do, and of course this is assuming that they're behaving themselves and passing in a correct full name, but let's just say, let's do split name, and what we'll do is we'll do full name dot split here. So let's assume they pass in something like this. Let's do Alan.email, and let's just say okay, not particularly interesting, I know, but let's just suppose we do something like this. So what's going to happen is, if you imagine the split method being called on this, it's going to split this string apart from this white space here. So what it'll do, it'll effectively give us a list of 2 items. So let's just quickly go ahead and run. So no error, that's fine. And then if we then go ahead and do print split name here, we should see that list consisting of these 2 things now split apart. So let's quickly get this one out of the way, hit run, and there we go, like that here. And now we can use sequence unpacking to unpack that list. So if I do self.fname and do self.lname here, let's do it like that. We'll say that's equal to split name here. And that's where the actual setting happens, this part. You can do this in one line. In fact, I think we will do that. So if we take this here, we'll get rid of that, that sort of duplicate. So what we're saying is, take in a string, split it apart, and split it apart into two things, hopefully, if they passed it incorrectly. And then once they've been split into their two things, give the first item to fname, give the last item to lname here. So let's do a proper name. Let's say, let's try to think of a more interesting name. Let's say it's Anakin, and let's say his last name is, there we go, something like that. Okay. And then now let's try and do print alan.email. And there we go. So what's happened there is that Anakin codebreaker, that was passed into fullname.split, split apart into two items. So Anakin goes to fname, codebreaker goes to lname. And then when we then say here, print alan.email, that's us then accessing this property, which, as we discussed earlier, takes the most recent iteration of the first name and the last name. So what we can do to show this in action, we copy this and we'll print the email either side of us using that setter. And there we go, that was the original. And there's the last here, like that. Now, of course, if you're doing it like this, I would recommend perhaps putting in some validation. So suppose, for example, I did some dots here. Let's see how this could be broken. Just like that. So in this case here, this would be split apart into three separate things. And of course, we can't pack three variables into this. It's just not going to happen. So what you could do perhaps is then just do try. And I would do an exception. So I would do except value error. Let's just do print too many values. Let's try that again. There we go. So effectively we're just catching that from happening. Print off to the user there's too many values, and therefore nothing is set, and we're good to go. Next up is to have a look at how we do a deleter. So if I quickly blank this off, and I'll do it underneath here. So if I just do del alan.email, so I'm calling the del function, and I want to say delete that email. Okay, and we get a similar issue to earlier on. It's saying the property email doesn't have a deleter. So like earlier on we had didn't have setter, when it's now saying this doesn't have a deleter. And it's almost the same setup. So if I take this here, bring that into there, all I've got to do is do email.deleter. We keep the same def email, the same self, and instead all we want to do now is decide, well, what happens to self.fname and self.lname? And that's it. So in this case here, all I could do is take this. Oh, let's make sure I put that on the right line. There we go. It's equal to none here. So what will happen now is it'll basically turn the email to non.non@mail.com. So let's make sure I pack this all together, bring this up a little bit. So now if I call this now, and let's print here, so we'll do print alan.email. There we go, non.non@mail.com. And this could be anything. This could be, this could be blank strings. So you could happily do that if you want to make the email look a bit, not perfect, but yeah, we get the idea. So this could be any value which you want to be set upon the delete function being called on your property. So just to go over the three things we've done, we didn't technically do the first one, that was already here, but the idea of a property initially is to effectively say return this, and in this case this is an f string which takes the most recent f name and the most recent l name and just returns a nicely formatted email. In this case it was alan.turing@mail.com. The purpose of email.setter is to effectively say take in some data, and then from that data split it apart and then set those values to fname and lname. So in this case we took in full name. Let's see, we took in this here. So if I just make that a bit nicer, this got split apart into Anakin and codebreaker and therefore given to fname and lname. And then that then meant that once we called the email from that point, it was then, in this case, anakin.codebreaker@mail.com. And then the email.deleter, this is there to respond to whenever the del function is called. So the del function is called on alan.email, wakes this up, and this says, okay, set the f name and the l name to blank and blank. So therefore after that, if you then try and print off the email, we get blank.blank@mail.com. Cheers for watching, guys. Hope you all have a great rest of your week, and see you soon.